do so. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Iris Taylor, and I am one of the co-leads for SEMPQIC. And joining us on this call is the consultant manager of this particular arm of SEMPQIC, which is Dr. Cynthia Tagg, and supported by the project manager, Jabita Bingham. And so the three of us primarily will be facilitating the outcomes that are desired for this particular project. So go to the next slide. Okay. Well, what we would like to cover today, it looks like it's a lot, but essentially we want to describe what the project is and then give you in detail what the applicant eligibility is and the process of overview, where that is the process that we'll be using to select the applicant. Go through the steps of what you should contain in the application around your budgeting and other considerations. We will go over reporting guidelines, which those that are successful, what your requirements would be, and then a little bit around the IT support that you'll need to get into our grant application software process. We'll review the timelines and be sure that you have all the important information. We hopefully will have some time left for Q&A. We would like this the time frame for this webinar to be approximately an hour, no longer than more than an hour and 15 minutes. If you have questions, so as we're discussing them, if you will put them in the chat, we will be monitoring the chat and we'll be able to address those questions in the chat first as we conclude the seminar. Okay, let's go to the next slide. For those of you who are not familiar with SEMPQIC, SEMPQIC is the perinatal quality improvement for Region 10. And Region 10 is comprised of Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb counties. The Perinatal Quality Improvement Coalitions have been established for like the last 6 years or so, and they were established by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. They are designed and looking at reducing disparities associated with maternal and infant health outcomes. Ideally, we would like to say that we influencing systems that allows us to either completely eradicate or reduce preventable deaths, whether they're maternal deaths or whether they're infant deaths. The coalition itself meets 4 times a year, although we're working 12 months out of the year. And for those 4 times a year, the membership is really comprised of a full continuum of stakeholders. We have parents, we have families, we have health plans, we have health systems, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and those programs who are focused in looking at maternal and infant health programming. Go to the next slide. Okay. So we talked about a little bit about who we are. So that's who SEMPQIC is. The leads for SEMPQIC are Venice Anthony, as well as Aletha Carr. But what do? We support our partners in community and facilitate the work that they do to the extent that we can contribute. The thrust is to say that if we have a collective impact, how can we reduce preventable deaths, be it maternal or infant? And we do so with an equity lens in all that we do, because we're concerned about the overall disparities that occur within the region that we're responsible for. We also have a close networking with MyAIM, because we believe in terms of evidence-based criterion around service provision, that MyAIM program represents that. So we use a lot of work and learn from the community and our partners, as well as opportunities for which we facilitate actually promoting or enhancing the programming that's available within the community. The majority of the funds related to SEMPQIC is funded through the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. You can go to the next slide. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we're doing. So what we're excited about today is that this is the second year that the Michigan Health and Human Services, Department of Health and Human Services, has provided one-time funding for community-based organizations to look at programming that actually reduces or has the potential to reduce infant and maternal mortality. The thrust of the funding is to, in 2023, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services released their newest version of their strategic plan for improving birth outcomes. And in that plan are a series of recommendations. So this funding is to say to community-based organizations, if you would look at those recommendations and propose activities that you would engage in that were in support of achieving the outcomes desired out of those recommendations, that here's an opportunity for us to provide some funding to facilitate you in being able to do so. Likewise, this year, we will also specifically set a dollar amount aside specifically to support organizations who are involved in childbirth education. Being childbirth education, we know being one of the things that we believe that supports healthy births. So there are two pots of money. We'll look at those who apply for recommendations, looking at activities that support the recommendations. They're in the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services strategic plan for improving birth outcomes. And there also will be a pot of money designed specifically for organizations who are supporting childbirth education programming, whether that's for programming for providers or programming for individuals in the community. It may be that your organization will have both components, childbirth education, as well as looking at health disparities around those things that impact and maternal and infant mortality. But in doing so, and you'll hear later on in this presentation, you would specifically have to have a budget submission for the childbirth education and then a budget submission for the other part of your proposal. So it is a possibility that you can integrate them, but there has to be a distinction in the budgeting process related to specific activities on both sides. Grants are going to be provided across Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties, and looking at supporting efforts that will improve disparities in birth outcomes and ensuring healthy births, as well as providing childbirth education for whether it's for providers or for individuals within the community. Go to the next slide. So now we want to begin with the applicant eligibility. So now you know what we're funding, and we want to talk about who is eligible to be able to apply. So I'd like to have Dr. Tagg join us at this point to talk about the applicant eligibility and the further items that are listed on the agenda. Dr. Tagg.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. This is an exciting opportunity to get the entire community involved in our work to reduce negative or inadvertent preventable birth outcomes. So if you are on this webinar, I know that you have seen the information that's on this slide and also on the next slide, because we put this information in the announcement as well as in the RFP submission. But just to highlight a few things on the applicant eligibility. Number one, you do not have to be a nonprofit. It could be an entrepreneurial organization, and we did do that last year, but you have to have a tax ID. You also have to have the infrastructure to be able to manage a grant. So community-based organization, nonprofits are welcome, tribal organizations are welcome, governmental entities at the county and the local level are also welcome. As already been stated, the service area is Region 10, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties, which includes the city of Detroit. We know that if you're already serving in that community and providing services to that population, it'll be a little easier for you to implement a program, because remember, our programs have to be completed by September 30th. We're going to get into the timelines and a few other details a little bit later in this presentation, but that gives you an edge if you are already in the service area providing services to that population. We also are very, very clear that you have to have the infrastructure to support the management of a grant. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit for a minute about what kinds of things will we fund. This also was in the information that I mentioned. You all know that we've talked about childbirth education. Dr. Taylor has already spoken to that, and I'll have a little bit more on that for you in a forthcoming slide. And the activities that are in that report, there's also be a link to that report. It was one in the announcement, and there'll be another link at the end of this presentation so that anyone who does not have access to it can get to it and to see it. I just want to also just mention that part of an acceptable activity is if you are already, say, for example, providing home visits, maybe you're providing home visits and you want to add childbirth education, you can do that. So we do allow for you to enhance any existing programs or expand on any existing programs. If you're providing safe sleep education, you may decide that I want to apply to get some cribs, pack and plays, and other material that can be supported of the education. So that would be acceptable also. So it doesn't have to be something brand new, but it can be an expansion or an enhancement of an existing program. But it has to be distinct from what you're already doing. All right, next slide, please. So one of the things that came up for us last year that we spent some considerable time on is the fact that some organizations are small or they're new and they need to have a fiduciary. And maybe they don't have the infrastructure to support all of the grant management activities from the finance side. So if you partner with a fiduciary, the following will be required. An organizational profile of the fiduciary, that person's CEO and CFO will need to be indicated. And there will be space in the application, if you haven't seen it already, that allows for this information to be included. The fiduciary will also have to provide their financial information, including not only their tax ID, but their most recent audits and operating budget. And we really want to see, I can't stress this enough, a written memorandum of agreement between the fiduciary and the program implementation agency or organization. It's really important that it's clear up front, and we know that you guys have talked about it up front. Things like who's going to receive, how are people to be paid? What is the process for that? How are decisions going to be made? Who's going to order materials? Who's going to keep the records? Who's going to provide the reports? And we'll talk about that in a moment, because our grant will, if you receive the grant, you will be asked to provide 3 programmatic reports. So who's going to provide that information and who's going to insert that into our portal or our system that we have for collection of data. So those are just some of the things that we look to see in a written memorandum of agreement signed by the fiduciary and the implementing organization, and that will need to be put together and uploaded into the application. You don't have to put it in if you don't have it finalized at the time you apply, although that would be desirable. But before any monies take place or change hands from us to the fiduciary, we must have that written memorandum of agreement. Next slide, please. All right. So a little bit different this year. Are we really focusing on the target population? The last year we were on the target population, but a much broader view was taken to disperse the funds. We really want to focus on, for this fiscal year, women in the perinatal journey. And I'll give you a definition in just a moment. This the women, their partners, and also for infants. So what is the perinatal journey? What is the perinatal period? It includes prenatal and postpartum stages, as well as the first year of an infant's life, up to their first birthday. The partners include expectant parents or fathers of individuals caring for infants up to 1 year of age or until their first birthday. We found a lot of fathers were very actively involved and interested in participating, so we want to make sure that they are also included. All the proposed services must address and/or align with the recommendations in the report from October 23, the Advancing Healthy Birth Strategic Plan. I'm going to comment on that at the next slide, please. So those of you who have seen the report, that's the cover of the report. That's what it looks like. These are the categories that are in that report. And let me just comment on those. During the application process, you will be asked which of these areas will you be focusing on, and you will be asked to choose not more than 2. You may be doing things that spill over into the other areas, but we want you to indicate the top 2, 1 or 2, that your proposal and your program is focusing on. When we talk about health across the reproductive cycle, we really are talking about women of childbearing age, and it relates to addressing the chronic conditions that affect the birth outcomes, such as hypertension, such as diabetes, such as any chronic conditions that may affect birth outcomes. So the woman may not necessarily be in the perinatal journey in terms of being pregnant or postpartum, but if they're planning to have a baby, they're in that childbearing age and they have these conditions, you can include them in your proposal. Full-term healthy weight babies, I think we know that that's done primarily in the prenatal period, and it has implications for nutrition and getting them access to prenatal care. The infant safely sleeping, we talked about education and supplies, childbirth education, and again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but it refers to a structured curriculum. It's not a one-time event. And then the mental and behavior health is increasingly important, and that's been highlighted in that report. And when we talk about that, not only are we talking about stress, we're talking about depression, we're talking about alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, we're talking about anxiety and coping, and also use of a universal screening tool. And that is also something that is being supported. And then finally, wellness and other support during the perinatal period. You don't go through this journey alone. We want women to feel supported and not like they're isolated and alone. So if you have something in your proposal that can address that, then that would also be something, an area that you can check in your application. Next slide, please. Okay, childbirth education. Okay, we've been talking about that. Childbirth education, as mentioned by Dr. Taylor, we do have a pot of money just for childbirth education, and it covers training, not only the structured curriculum that is delivered by qualified or trained health professionals, but it also can support training or support for childbirth educators. So you may say, well, I've got people here, that's something we want to do in the future. So and we're going to, at this time, collaborate with another agency to cover it, but I'm going to send a couple of my staff so that they're trained so that when this grant is over, we can continue childbirth education. So training or support is also included. We looked at the Medicaid definition of childbirth education because Medicaid does cover childbirth education, and it is group classes that include at a minimum the following. It can include more than this, but this is the minimum. And when you do your proposal, you'll need to highlight this in some way to show that you understand that it's a group, you understand that it's a structured group of classes, a series of classes, and that these items are covered. So changes in the body during pregnancy, delivery process, including preterm labor, prenatal and the postpartum period, including warning signs. That's a big one. that we find is a problem in terms of poor birth outcomes. How to care for the infant can include parenting and breastfeeding. And of course, we want them to connect with other women and build a support network through that group education process. So this is a kind of a biggie. It's a new one for us in terms of this particular grant. But childbirth education has been around for a long time, but this is the minimum. I can't stress that enough, and you need to highlight that in your application. Next slide, please. So budgeting, let's talk about that. So we do have, and we're all familiar with budgeting if you've written grants before. So we have an itemized budget that we want you to have with a narrative. It's really important that you include in that narrative an explanation as to what that budgeted item is. For example, if you put down that you want to purchase car seats, that would be your under equipment, you would have car seats. And then the item would say, this is just for sake of this example, maybe it's going to say $10,000. And then in the narrative, you'll say, we're going to buy 10 car seats, 100 car seats at $10 each, or whatever it is. We want to see the narrative along with each of those items. So I can't stress that enough. We had a little bit of concerns with that last time. You can include indirect cost, maximum of 10% of your total grant award. You must have a process to document your expenditures. That's back to that infrastructure. If you're providing childbirth education, the application is set up so that you can have two budgets in the same application. One budget will be for childbirth education, and the other budget will be for other items if you have other components of a program that you are applying for. If you're only doing childbirth education, then you'll only have the one budget. And you will be required to report on expenditures on the 3 reports that we'll talk about in just a moment. Now, you may request a certain amount of money, but you may not be awarded that amount of money. So that means you'll have to go back in and revise your budget and also revise your proposed activities. Next slide, please. So again, we'll be monitoring the expenditures on through the reports. There will be 3 reports, but all funds must be spent by September 30th. I can't stress that enough. If at any time, and we did have this happen last year, if at any time a grantee feels that because of whatever changes that may occur, that they are unable to expend all the funds or complete their program, they need to let us know ASAP. And then we will work with you to adjust your budget, to adjust whatever needs to be adjusted in the application so that you can complete what you can. But please let us know ASAP. Don't wait till the end, or don't wait till September 15th or September 1st, because then we can take those funds that you aren't able to spend and give them to someone else who can use them. One other side point that you want to take note of when you do the reports, and we'll stress this for you again at that time, if you have done, when it's time to do your report and you're putting down what your spend down is or what your expenses to date have been, if you have an invoice, but yet it's not paid, you can count that as being spent on that next grantee report. For example, if you've ordered car seats, infant car seats, and you've ordered them to a tune of $10,000, you receive an invoice from the company that says you owe us a payment due of $10,000, and the report is due, our report is due the next day. You can count that $10,000 as expended as long as you have that invoice. So that applies for each of the reports, including the final report. So this will come up again, but I wanted to mention that here. Next slide, please. Okay, you saw this before in terms of what's ineligible. I don't think there's any surprises here. I do want to just highlight one, and that is the entertainment cost as it relates to food. If you're having a baby shower and you're having a luncheon or snacks for the people that participate, that's an acceptable expense. But if you're just having a staff meeting and you want to give everybody a good lunch because they did a good job, that's not an acceptable expense for the grant. It's got to be directly program related. So these, I think, are pretty understandable, and I won't spend any more time on these. Next slide, please. Okay, the grantee reports. So your reports are going to be due 3 times this year: April 18th, July 10th, And then the final one, we said October 10th or 14th. I'm pretty sure it'll be the 14th, but we may want to have it a little bit earlier because we had some delays in getting our reports in. We'll confirm that when we get close to that date. But nevertheless, that does not negate the fact that all expenditures must occur by September 30th. I can't stress that enough. So we will be asking for reports 1 and 2 for your goals and activities. We're asking you for an update on what that is, where you are to date. The budget spend down, where you are to date. However, for the final report, we want those same items, but there's a demographic information that we want on the people that you have served. Now, in the application, you'll see where we have listed what those demographic items are: number of men, number of women, number of pregnant women, and other information that is listed there. We are asking you to provide in the application for us, what is your plan for collecting that data if you don't collect it already? We want to know, what is your plan? By that we mean you have to start collecting it from the beginning. You're not going to be able to wait to the end to collect it. So what is your plan? My plan might be, I'm going to put together an intake tool. So everybody we serve, there's an intake tool, and these questions will be on the intake tool. Or your plan might be some other way to electronically collect that data. But you have to let us know, and that is something that we look at when we score the application. So I just wanted to stress that for you. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk a little bit about submitting the proposal. You're going to hear a little bit more about the Foundant portal, and all applications must be submitted electronically. Don't want anybody waiting. They must be submitted by December 31st at 11:59. I don't want anybody calling us at 11:58 or 11:50 and saying, well, I had technical difficulties and I couldn't get it in, so now I'm going to need to be able to send it to you by paper. No exceptions. You need to start early that day or the day before. I would advise you to try to get it in even a day or two before. Let that be your goal. But it must be in by 11:59 on December 31st. Through the portal Foundant, as we mentioned, and we do have a team of health professionals that will be scoring the application and the application responses. I really want to encourage you to be very thorough in your application responses, because that's what they will be looking at and that's what they will be using to score. Now, already I've had one question about the goals and activities and expected outcomes. Let me just say here that is very important. Let me give you an example of what we're looking for there. So just as an example, say your goal is to improve the conditions for infant safe sleep and reduce the number of preventable infant deaths. That could be your overall global goal. Your activities might be to provide activity one, provide safe sleep education, and then activity 2, provide pack and play to all of the program participants who complete the education. The expected outcome might be 300 people will complete this process and 150 car seats will be given out. We want to see some numerical representations of your expected outcomes. Then when it's time to do your report, so report 1 could say, we did 1 workshop, 50 people came, we gave out 10 car seats, so I'm just giving you a little bit of an example of what we're looking for with the overall goal, with the activities that you will do in your proposal and the expected outcome. And then when it's time to report, you give us also some numerical data as best you can. Maybe you don't have numerical data. Maybe it's going to be, we did a pre and post test to determine the expected outcome because we want to increase their knowledge. We did a pre and post test, and the pre and post test showed that 15% of the people who took the test showed an improvement in their scoring and in their knowledge. So just again, giving you some examples of what we're looking for in that particular section. Final decisions on the grant awards will be made by the SEMPQIC leadership team, and then everyone will be notified in writing whether they are receiving an award in the amount or that their application was denied. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn it over to, is it you, Jabita, or to Michelle from Metro Solutions as they talk to you about tips on working with Foundant. If you have any questions, again, about anything before, put them in the chat. we'll have a chance to address questions at the end. Okay, Javita?
Yep. So first, once you click on that link found on the announcement letter, sorry, give me just a second. It will take you to this page. If you don't already have an account, which you probably wouldn't, you'd have to create a new account. It will prompt you to enter in all your information, including the tax ID, CEO information, and your personal information for whoever is creating the account. And then once you complete that, you should see this page, and it will ask, did you receive their email? Make sure to check your junk folder.
Jamita, could you enlarge the item on the screen so that people can actually see that?
But they will be able to access the PowerPoint later on, and once they download it, they can enlarge the pages, the screenshots. And this should look all familiar to them because by now I'm sure that they created an account and probably seen the application. After that, you will see this quick little message from SEMPQIC and Metro Solutions. And if you see on the top right-hand side, you'll see the apply button. If you click that, it will take you straight to the application itself. Over here, first you'll have our 3 eligibility questions. If you incorrectly, I guess, answer any of these, you are ineligible. It won't let you go on to the rest of the application. But if you are eligible, then you will have a series of sections to complete within the application. And then finally, you can either save your application as you complete it. You can also submit it once you're completely finished. And that is it.
So just to summarize what has been highlighted around Founded, it's designed to be user-friendly with self-instructions, and you can save and then go back in and continue to do your work. You don't have to complete the whole application at one time, so you can do that in segments. Okay, we can go to the next slide. We will make available in the when we at the end resources available to you there. If you are having difficulty to find that, how do you contact us so that we can facilitate any concerns that you may have? Okay, grant timelines. We've already got the announcement letter out, and the application is now currently open. And will close on the end of December. And there is no exceptions to the submission of the application. When it closes, it will actually close. And that is because we really are trying very hard in this timeline to process the application so that people will have at least a full 8 months to expend the dollars. And so we're going to stick very much to these timelines as listed. Once the information has been submitted, the applicants will be reviewed in terms of financial integrity first, and then we will go into dividing it up to reviewers. There will be 3 teams of reviewers, and the reviewers will review via an established rubric that each of them would score your application. And that scoring process will take place that first week when your application is submitted. And it is the intent that once they're all scored, then we will look at beginning to give awards and unfortunately denial letters to those who weren't successful this round between January the 15th and the 21st of 2024. And giving that and the opportunity then to do any adjustment to your application or your proposal or your budget, depending on the dollar amount that you are awarded, and actually execute a contract that will be in Founded. You'll go back into Founded and execute their contract. and then we can distribute the funds. And it's our intent that we will have funds distributed by 15th of February. Again, all proceeds to the project have to be, all funding has to be expended by September the 30th. And then the reporting schedule is as was listed in a previous slide, the 3 dates to which you report after doing your reporting. That sort of in itself is a high-level discussion of the timelines and the reasons for them. Again, we want you to have as much time as possible to expend your money. So that's why the desire is to try to get all funds out by the 15th of February, which is why if it is determined that you have to have the fiduciary, you've even determined that yourself in your application, or it's determined that when we review your financial integrity part of your application that we're recommending that in order to proceed with this grant, you have to have a fiduciary. It is important, if you're going to stick to these timelines, that you do your part to complete all information as expeditiously as possible. So having that ability to do that is sort of critical to us being able to stay online with the time. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Here's the contact information. Gia Bigum is going to serve as the program manager for this particular program, and there is a email listed there for which you can send our request or contacts to them. Other individuals who are a part of the team include Vern Anthony, myself, Alethea Carr. Our director for SEMPQIC is Kizzy Montgomery, and Cynthia Tagg, as we mentioned, is the consultant lead for this particular program. We will provide any other information that you might need if you would send any questions or thoughts to Jabita, and we will see to it that there is a response to you immediately. So as I was looking through the chat, instead of putting all the answers in the chat, there's not that many questions. I'll start, Cynthia, by going through the questions in the chat. Was the first one was, will you be have access to this presentation? And yes, this presentation will be posted on the website, and all applicants will also be available to review this webinar. And so that's the answer to that.
If I might interject here, even IT questions can go to Jabita if there's any, and she will get them to the right person. We don't have a separate IT contact. All questions I'll go through Jabita for the future, not today.
Where the fetal mortality review data comes into place is during that review process, there are also recommendations, and the data also supports trends of things that are happening in that particular county or across the lower part of the state or the entire state. If your data, you represent certain data that you decide you want to do a program around based upon what that data has represented, then that's how the report is integrated into this process, which is why the Michigan Maternal Surveillance report is also listed along with the strategic planning for improving healthy births. And so you can do recommendations under either. Yes, an organization can be a fiduciary, and an organization can also be a provider of services or programming, and can submit an application on their own, as well as also have the integrity, financial integrity to be able to manage the dollars for your programming. So the answer is yes, you can be both a fiduciary and an applicant. Two different sets of reporting that you'll have to do, but you can do both. Then there was a question about an organization that's based out of state, whether or not they're could be eligible for providing this particular program. If there is evidence of programming services that have been provided in the county, and you can show proof of that, as well as how this would be provided in the county, that's something that can be considered. Yes, an organization can have multiple entries. That was one of the questions. Can you submit more than one application? Yes, you may. So that the question is, can a plan include budgeting for state assistance?
What do you mean?
Staff assistance and
Oh, for staff assistance, excuse me, I should put on my glasses. Or what is the remainder of that? The rest of it doesn't come up. Staff assistance or pay. Yes, you can have staff in your budget. If the staff is directly associated with the programming that we are funding, then paying for staff is appropriate part of your budget.
Mhm.
Will the rubric be shared? Yes, we can post the rubric on the website so that anyone can go in and look at it. It's a standard rubric that similar to the one we used at the last funding cycle. And yes, it is available so you can see what the criterion that the reviewers will be looking at in reviewing your application. No, there is not a paper application. All applications are electronic. The application is electronic. It is inside our grant application software. And so you have to go into that programming to access the application, and you have to complete and submit the data inside of that programming.
As well as all the reports have to be electronic.
And the execution of your contract or your grant agreement will be also within Funded. So the idea is to be able to track all documentation within one system. Okay, is there a maximum amount you can apply for your program? Funding for this particular grant ranges from $25,000 to $100,000. So the maximum grant is $100,000, and the minimum grant that will be awarded is $25,000. So your budget should be in a range of somewhere between $25,000 and $100,000. I think that
it asks, does parenting fall under childbirth education classes?
Yes, it does.
yes, it does. Yes.
And then the next question is
Go ahead.
the next question is, as part of the overall grant, if we are training staff in childbirth education only. I guess that's not a complete question, but I think they're asking, can they apply for only training staff in childbirth education?
Yes, you can. Yes. So there's two pots of money. You can apply simply for childbirth education, whether it's for providers or whether it's for the general community. And you can apply for the recommendations that are in the state strategic plans for healthy births, improving birth outcomes, as well as any health disparity that we know that has untoward effects towards a healthy birth, be it maternal or infant mortality. So, or you could do a program that's integrated that has a little bit of both, but if you do that, you have to have two separate budgets. So there's three things. You could do childbirth education only as a pot of money specifically for that category. Or you could do childbirth education integrated with looking at the recommendations for improving birth outcomes as well as disparities. Or you could just apply for something that's looking at the recommendations out of the state's strategic plan for improving birth outcomes, as well as the Michigan maternal surveillance, which is the fertility data. So you can have three different areas. You can look at disparities, you can look at the recommendations, you could look at childbirth education, or you could have something that integrates both.
If I may add, Iris, if a person or organization only wants to apply for dollars to train staff on childbirth education, they need to make sure their application indicates how they plan to use that staff going forward. It may be after this particular grant period, but still, what's the purpose? How are they going to use that?
Okay, Jabita, is there?
Yep, the next question is, will participants be given an analysis for the applications that are declined?
There'll be an opportunity for a discussion if you like. If you submit a request in writing, we will attempt to be able to do that, but we don't have a formal structure for which that would occur.
All right, the next question is, to what degree do we need to demonstrate a need for our proposed goals? For example, if we are proposing to purchase a car seat, do we need to show any statistics to show that our population does not have car seats?
No, you just have
No, but you look at data. We do want your proposal to be data-based for as much as that's possible, or data-driven. So that you could look at data around safety and what data is saying that supports that we're still having incidents of people having in accidents who are not using car seats, et cetera, for why the distribution is there. Or if you have data that supports why there are your population that you're serving simply just has a need for that because it's not on their priority of things to do.
All right. The next question is, can facility improvement costs be fundable?
no.
No, you cannot. We cannot fund brick and mortar. So one of the things on the ineligible expenditure list that is in this presentation is capital equipment. So you can't use the money for renovation or any other type of brick and mortar project.
The next question.
If I might add, Iris, so last year it came up about purchase of equipment. If an item costs more than $5,000 per unit, there's all kind of special approvals that will be required. So I would encourage you to rethink if that's part of your application, that you not include an item that costs $5,000 or more, or if you do, understand it may take several. It takes a while for us to get that approved. It has to go through several.
The next question is, as a follow-up, we can't have a copy of the application to share across the staff. We have to copy and paste from the portal.
You can the portal.
Sorry, Dr. Taylor, did I cut you off?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you should be able to just, right click it and then just print out the page that has the list of questions. But the application should be submitted online.
If I might just jump in real quickly. Hi, everyone. I apologize. This is Michelle from Metro Solutions. Yes, you will be able to, once you're in the Foundant portal, on the top right, there will be an opportunity for you to click the all questions, or I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's an opportunity for you to print out a PDF of the questions that are in the application so you can share them with everyone on your team.
Thank Thank you, Michelle.
Yes.
The next question is, does an organization's fiduciary also have to be located in Wayne County or Region 10?
No.
All right. The next question is, if we're focusing on mental health portion with the childbirth education, would chair massages be considered a qualified health profession? Chair masseuses be considered a qualified health professional structured in their curriculum?
I would say that it can be included as part of the overall curriculum because under mental health, under the Medicaid goal definitions, they include stress management, anxiety management. So I would say that it could be included. Just be real clear about how you're including it and that the cost should be something that's within the market rate.
Is equipment like laptop projector speakers to deliver classes allowable?
I would say, Iris, did you want to answer that or you want me?
I would say yes, if you can say how it's directly going to enhance the ability to you to do the programming that you related. I mean, you just can't go out and buy a laptop. It's got to be a laptop that's necessary or critical to the programming objectives that you're trying to achieve.
Doulas considered qualified childbirth educator instructors?
Many doulas have been trained to be childbirth education instructors. So I would say, yes, they are one of the health professionals that can do the work. But remember, structured classes, and typically doulas are not expert on all of those items that were listed under childbirth education, and it's a series of classes, but a doula can provide it if they have the training.
And it is possible to have different speakers for different subjects. So it doesn't like you say you have to have one speaker for all of the subjects. You may have one person is doing this and another person doing something else. Go ahead, Jabita.
And then I think this might be the last questions. Can the funding be used for technology equipment such as iPads for intake of data?
Again, any purchases of equipment have to be less than $5,000 for any one item. And you also has to be directly associated to the achievement of the outcomes design and the programming. So if part of your program requires certain data elements have to be collected from the providers, then having a laptop or an iPad as part of that, your budget would be appropriate.
All right, just two more questions. The first one was, what is the maximum amount we can apply for? Can you please repeat?
$100,000. Grants will be awarded between $25,000 and $100,000.
And then the next question is, I am a fiscal sponsor for a grassroots nonprofit in Wayne County. However, my organization is not located in the county. Could that organization still possibly apply?
The organization, yes, the organization does not have to be located in the county. It has to provide services in one of the three counties. So if your service area is in one of the three counties and your office is outside of the county, that is fine.
And then final question, and then we'll stop at that one. I am opening a daycare. Are we able to make the program just for our clients?
If that is the population to be served and you describe it as such in terms of its description and its numbers, then that's the population you're submitting for. In other words, yes, that could be the case, but your programming has to support why you're doing it specifically for just that population. So that's fine.
And that was the last of it. No more questions.
Any additional questions that may come up after you've had a chance to think about it or as you begin to develop your proposal, feel free to use any of the various links that may provide clarity for you, or in addition to that, please feel free to send Jabita your questions and we will expeditiously get answers back to you. Understanding December the 31st is here in a minute. And if that's it, listed here again are the links that are sort of critical data elements for as you're completing your application. The application itself has to be unfounded, so that's a link that you really do need to have. And these will also be posted on the website, and hopefully we will get those things posted no later than tomorrow, so that you can have it for your reference. And if that's it, Cynthia, I'll turn it back to you for any other closing remarks that you may have.
We're really excited about the opportunity for our community partners to engage with us. The SEMPQIC Coalition has been around for almost 10 years now, and they're just really excited about this opportunity. So we expect to get a lot of proposals, and please don't hesitate to reach out to